Do you have anything to add before we plow into this hot goss, Griffin?
No, these are two incredible hair, beautiful hair from both of these people here.
Yeah.
Something snapped.
Well,
and
speaking of that,
time to wake up.
Well, not everyone is awake. Before I let you go, I did just want to ask you about this to piggyback off of the Guantanamo stuff and some of the disagreements I had with Cenk about it. Cenk Uygur of TYT is now tweeting that he is going to go to Dallas right now. This was last night to talk to Dr. Phil and James Poulos on The Blaze. You know why? Because we need to talk to each other and begin to understand each other. The powerful have driven a wedge.
Oh, I understand the right. I understand them. I certainly understand them.
Now, I read this that was like, I don't know how this is going to turn out, Kyle, but this is the kind of stuff that makes me want to die inside. Look, it's okay to talk to the right. You and I have been on Piers Morgan. We've debated, obviously, Cenk goes on Piers Morgan all the time, but like the idea that we're going to sit down and be like, how can we come together to decide who to deport and who not to deport? This is such a waste of time.
You know, Cenk's analysis on this reminds me a lot of my very sweet, very not connected to politics grandmother. You know, she's a wonderful woman, but she's, definitely MAGA coded. And as my sister tried to explain to her the dangers of Donald Trump being president and how people close to her that she works with are not going to have access to visas that allow them to stay in the country. And, my grandma's response is, oh, no, she has a great story. That's not going to happen to her. Oh, no, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine for that lady. Don't worry. It's the other bad people that we're getting out of here, right? And then you have Dr. Phil, who's like, chomping at the bit to go out and get in on these deportation ICE raids. So, like, he's ready to do the cruelty. He'll probably show up in Missouri and start collecting bounties as soon as he'll start riding around with the big old Stetson cowboy hat and just participating in mass cruelty efforts. But don't worry, if you sit down with him, I'm sure he'll convince him that these people have a nice story and everything will be right as rain again. And that's what Cenk intends to do.
Yeah, I just don't understand why this can't be at least a debate, like for the sake of us, the viewer.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Actually have to watch this shit. Like at least like get a bit spicy. At least bring that kind of Piers Morgan explosive quality that we all know have within you. This just sounds boring. The only people that are going to watch this are just right-wing boomers who want to watch propaganda, and to them, like, Cenk is the furthest left person they can now be exposed to because he will pander to them. So it just seems boring and not really something that will ultimately benefit the Young Turks either. We've already seen this experiment play out multiple times. When Cenk goes on a show to pander to MAGA like this, it doesn't result in any of those people subscribing to TYT. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and I have a question. What could you possibly not know about Dr. Phil that you need to like fill in the blank on here? Like, what are the big questions? Like, where's your summer home in Israel? Like, I don't know what Dr. Phil has like. He leaves it all out on the field. He's not mysterious.
Cenk and Anna have a rich history of collaborating with Dr. Phil in their
crusade
against identity politics. He was on the show a few months back, where they were talking about how the only way for the left to win is for them to combat woke. However, Dr. Phil didn't tell them that he was a Republican that loved Donald Trump.
Fuck. I mean, this is just such a missed moment. I've got more to say, but we can keep watching.
And he's doing it. I feel like Cenk is doing this to troll people who, again, because Cenk always says, oh, you're calling them Nazis, which we did. We earlier were just like talking about how Elon Musk is a fucking Nazi.
Because he did a Nazi salute multiple times, and he tweeted openly anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. This doesn't come out of nowhere. Lefties don't wake up out of bed and go, let me call everybody a Nazi. No, it's, there is evidence of Nazism. You are a Nazi. That's right. How that works.
But where's that gotten us, Kyle? Where's that gotten us?
No, I got a lot to say about this, because I had the philosophy of build bridges, change minds, hold their hands and walk them through it. I'm the guy that had that philosophy and embodied it the first term of Trump in 2016. I'm the guy who was on Joe Rogan's show 5 or 6 times, holding his hand like a fucking toddler and walking him through basic left-wing arguments. I was the reach across the aisle guy, right? You know what that got me? fucking Joe Rogan endorsing Donald Trump, having him on his podcast and letting him lie to his face repeatedly for 3 hours straight, where he said things like, I never said lock her up about Hillary Clinton. I never said that. It was other people that said that.
Like, even Rogan knows how to fact check that one. Like, even Rogan knows that he
didn't. He actually didn't.
Right, exactly.
So I understand the mindset. I understand where he's coming from. But bro, at some point, you have to stop pretending like we're having reasonable disagreements. These are not reasonable. It's not interesting to debate whether or not it was a good idea for Trump to sign an executive order that raises drug prices, or whether or not it was a good idea for him to sign an executive order that filled the swamp and said, all my cabinet, no more anti-corruption rules for them. It's not reasonable to say 1,500 January 6ers were pardoned, including violent ones, including ones that assaulted cops, including ones that diddle kids. Like, it's not
right
to sit across from these people and basically give them, like, it gives them cover. It gives them cover to pretend, oh, yes, I'm one of the good ones on the left, and I'm having a reasonable conversation with you. The reasonable conversation is not a conversation. It's a debate where you pummel them into the ground repeatedly.
Exactly. And they respect you for that. I do think that they respect you for that when you can actually win the debate, or in my case, just kind of like make fun of.
That's a really good point. The respect, like, they would respect you more if you came and fought, as opposed to like came and like bent over.
Oh, 100%, because it actually shows that you believe what you say. I think that part of the problem with these guys that don't understand the long-term pivot to the right, because there are ways to, over time be sophisticated in your pivot to the right. Like Tim Pool started out making content about the financial crash and, all this weird stuff. And then he was like, actually, it's really easy to get your bread buttered over here, runs right to the right, becomes bigger than ever. However, if you do it poorly, if you do it kind of dumb, like Jimmy Dore or Dave Rubin, or now like Cenk Uygur is doing, your luster wears off. Gavin calls it the sugar high, right? The token effect of you being a left winger that agrees with me. That is not something that is going to last. That is fleeting, right? And once you're no longer a lefty that agrees with me, you just become like a random ass pundit that's laundering people's reputation. And you don't have an actual base of people to watch you anymore. So you kind of, again, lose your luster.
Yeah. I also agree, with the idea of talking to right wingers. This is something we've discussed at length, but actually one thing, Griffin, that I've really appreciated about Breaking Points is some of the like focus groups they do where they actually are talking to normal ass real voters, or the one video you put together where you talk to people who voted for both AOC and Donald Trump. That was fascinating. And I do really think there should be more of those kind of people's, perspective included in the programming of political content, even online, because we do need to reckon with it, and we do need to understand it, and we can't just shame those people, and we can't just ignore the way they feel either, because it is a significant majority of the country at this point that does. But I just think that Dr. Phil isn't the same thing as that. You're talking to a propagandist. You're talking to someone who is responsible for poisoning the mind of those regular people. He's not a regular guy. So I just don't really see what the point is. Where I genuinely would rather watch Cenk sit down with a panel of normal Trump voters, people that are just like from Missouri or freaking Arkansas or something, and that are like,
hire us, Cenk. Cenk, let's do your makeover. We can do it. I completely agree. The crazy thing for me, learning from the AOC Trump interviews that like surprised me the most was like all of these were like Trump voting moms that like cared about immigration and like that wanted Trump to like deport people. And I was like, AOC like believes the opposite of that, and they didn't care because they respected that she was like 100, that she like said what she believed, and that she was real and like not phony, and like not hiding what she believed. Like people care about that more than like any policy. So that's a big lesson for anyone.
Yep, 100%. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that Trump ran on, it's still not even popular with the majority of people or with some people, but he forced it through anyway. Like abortion, for example. I think the left can learn so much from like the anti-abortion, the pro-life movement or whatever, because they stuck around. They didn't give up through thick and thin. They were like, we're going to be here. We're going to be a thorn in the side of the Republican administration. And guess where they are now? They fucking won. And there's no reason the left can't do that with just as crazy. Like no one thought that Roe was going to fall. Literally no one thought. It was a pipe dream.
We need to study the ways of the Westboro Baptist Church. Like we need to channel their techniques for our aims.
I wish you guys understood politics, because I was listening to Hakeem Jeffries talk, and unfortunately, the outcome is the outcome, and we have a duty to the American people to allow procedure to unfold So unfortunately, actually, our hands are tied, Gavin. We can't do that.
God damn it.
Them and dunk on them, there is a little bit more respect than someone who's kind of like, just like, hey, why can't we meet their side truly thinks that, like, yeah, me, who said Pete Hegseth is a rapist, should be like, sued for defamation, right? Or that I should be taken off of YouTube or whatever the hell else. Like, and we will see that happen in due time. But that's the question. I mean, I think it's really big of you because look, I know a lot of stand-up comics who would love to go on Rogan. I always make fun of it because my husband Matt's a stand-up, and I'm like, you would totally throw me under the bus to go on Rogan. Like, I always make fun of him because Rogan's a huge deal. Once you get on Rogan, people start paying attention to your stand-up.
I will say that used to be true. It's not true anymore. Now you have to go on Rogan and be like a right-wing dumbass. Now you have to go on there and try and like become the next person to crawl out of Joe Rogan's asshole and jerk him off. You know what I mean? Like, you have to basically go on there and be even cringier and more like just
if I got on, I'd go full Nancy Mace. I'd be like, they're transing the animals, Joe. Look at this bunny. They made it trans. Please watch my special.
Do that, his audience will completely reject you, right? Like, he used to be a total instant kingmaker. That was true at one point. You would blow up if you went on the Joe Rogan Experience and you were an unknown. Now, even lefties that have gone on there in the past, and this isn't a swipe at anybody. I like Ben Burgess a lot, but he went on the Joe Rogan, and I mean, it wasn't like it was that big of a deal for his career, right? He promoted the book, he moved on. His audience was like, I don't really want to hear from this socialist professor. You know what I mean? And so it's not like it's instantly going to take you to the moon. Even when Kyle was at a lull in his channel when he was going on Rogan, right? But as Rogan's audience decided, like, hey, we don't actually want to hear from guys that aren't Tim Dillon or Tony Hinchcliffe, they're not going to be as likely to follow Kyle back to his channel.
Yeah, you might be right about that. I don't know. I still think you would get a bump on the biggest platform,
If you do a good job. I agree.
If you're funny and like don't come off and then like I don't know. If you don't come off as an atypical liberal, I think there's like a lot of like cool lefties that would do a good job still on the show, like Kyle and like people like that. Like, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think you're gonna change like Joe's mind, because to change Joe's mind, you would have to like control his Instagram algorithm and like pipe it with like leftist memes instead of like whatever the fucking shit is swirling on his, and like that's not possible. But maybe you can talk to like 5% of his audience. Like, there's a bunch of people.
Like 30.
Yeah.
True. 30% of his audience that you could talk to.
I do think that there is a very specific kind of lefty that can still get the job done on a platform like Rogan. I remember we reacted at one point to what's his name, Stavros. On Theo Von.
Stavy, baby.
That was actually a good, I think, kind of articulation, because he didn't virtue signal. He didn't sound like he was, moralizing or even really all that ideological. He was just like, obviously Kamala is the better option. Like, do you want this country to fucking burn to the ground, bro? Like, just kind of the common sense. Like, I'm not some crazy socialist or whatever, but I can also just communicate in very normie terms the threats and the stakes of what's going on here. So it is a tight line to walk.
But also, like, Rogan is emblematic of American middle of the road like dads. Like, they don't view themselves as right wing, but like all of the news and memes are like pushing them more and more rightward like every day. Like, I don't think like he is like Joe Rogan is like a far right radical more than like most like center right like dad types.
I think he, on the COVID stuff and the anti-vax stuff, he's a little bit more
on the vax thing.
Average person.
I buy that.
I think most people at this point don't even care that much about that stuff, and it does seem like Joe Rogan just can't stop fucking thinking about it. Can't stop. It's like he has COVID derangement syndrome. I'm like, dude, we move on.
Yeah, one person that always has done a great job, who is a lefty, and we were talking about this a little bit, Griffin, and obviously I've been playing his Philly rant over and over and over and over again on repeat since the end of the Super Bowl yesterday. But Bill Burr has always been able to kind of walk that line and be a left-wing POV without being overhanded, without being liberal coded, just having that working class sensibility. But he always does advocate on behalf of like, more of the regular average Joe. He's never been a culture warrior. He's always been able to cut to the bone. And I'll never forget how well he performed. I don't even know if you would call it a performance, but he's sitting back. He's so laid back. He's so casual. His temperature never rises, but Joe's starting to feed him the bullshit about the vaccine. And he just looks back at him, he laughs in his face, and he's like, I've known you for 20 years. When did you go to fucking medical school? He was like, like all this, no, that's a crock of horse shit, Joe. He was like, stick to MMA. He was like, I can fly a helicopter. Don't put me behind a jet plane. You know what I mean? I know. He was like, I just asked my doctor shit. He was like, I'm lucky I can afford one in this fucking country. And it was an amazing moment because Joe's laughing while Bill Burr is totally alpha dogging him in the situation. And it's one of the last times I've seen a lefty just totally get Joe to laugh along with them and change his mind on stream. Obviously, it didn't last. It was like a fleeting moment.
He kind of did the same thing with Bill Maher, right? With the Israel situation, where he's like, what are you, a fucking general? He's like, it's not like he was really coming at him with a super pro-Palestinian argument. He was just kind of making fun of Bill Maher's super pro-Israel argument.
Yeah,
totally.
He's like, well, congratulations, you solved the problem. They should hire you. He's like, oh, you just go up there to be done tomorrow. You just got it all figured out. You're a genius. We didn't know. We discovered you live on air. Anyway, I think that kind of candor and sensibility would go a long way in trying to convert back to the left.
Well, at least we can all, no matter what happens to his podcast, we can all enjoy Joe Rogan's stand-up.
Might see you. And same thing with you if you're a political commentator. If you go on Rogan, like that's massive. And I really think it is a testament to your character, having not known you really, but the fact that you're like, I tried this, I was wrong, because you could have easily just played into more of the Rogan game and told him what he wanted to hear and kept on getting invited back. And then, do you understand what I'm saying? Like the only way to get invited back is to tell them what they want to hear.
Yes. And here's the thing. I have personal experience with this where I went on the PBD podcast a few years back now. And when I went on the PBD podcast, I went in there more with the mindset of, I'm not really going to hold their hand. I'll explain things as clearly as I can, but I'm going to be clear in what I'm saying. Right.
Sure.
When I did that, you read the comments on that video and it's people going, holy shit, he torched you for 2 hours straight. Right. Compared to how I was with Rogan, where I hold his hand and walk him. I don't think I was changing any minds. Right. And so here's what people need to understand. And Trump is the best example of this. How did Donald Trump win? If you disagree with him 1%, he would behead you and hold it up and say, anybody who crosses me even a little bit, you're donezo. It's over. It's a wrap. So, but on the left, for some reason, and among a lot of liberals, there's this weird thing. Oh, we got to be the bigger people. We got to meet them halfway. We got to do this. It's like, no. Tell the truth unapologetically and aggressively and confidently and let the chips fall where they may. And some people you're going to convince, some people you're not going to convince. But that's okay. You're going to get more of them by aggressively telling the truth than you are by pretending like there's reasonable disagreements where there are no reasonable disagreements. Guys, the Elon thing is like, this is just a perfect example.
Gavin used to quote TJ Kirk, the amazing atheist, all the time. And he would say, oh, it's true that you can catch a lot of flies with honey. But you can catch even more flies with a fucking fly swatter. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes the left just needs to employ the fly swatter. You hear an idea, you say, no, that's fucking stupid. Here is why, right? We'll go one step further than Donald Trump. Donald Trump will just say that's wrong, bad, cringe, terrible, disaster, whatever. We will follow up and say, here is why. The explanation and the follow through is how you win people back over, because then you start talking solutions. Right. And that's the other thing that the left has to deliver on. We have to be punchy with our criticism and then quick to return an actual realistic solution.
Yeah, and what's so crazy? First of all, I just want to know, I've never seen Kyle's hands go like this. He really is like he's fucking going for it. I love that. But for me, it's so crazy because Cenk is like built for this moment. We need angry, loud leftists. Like he is spec'd and built for this moment his whole fucking life. In video games, he's like the tank. He's like the warrior tank his whole life. And now he's like, actually, I'm a mage now and I'm casting spells. And it's like, bro, you've got the shield and the armor and the big sword. We need you right now for this, because he'd be so perfect for that fucking moment. So it is baffling that he keeps going this direction, because we all want to see the tank version of him, and it's just, I don't know if he's gonna hop back to that or not, but it just seems like such a missed opportunity.
I think there might be a couple of reasons for that. Do you think it has more to do with what a lot of people have speculated is Anna Kasparian's influence behind the scenes? It's sort of dragging him to the right along with her, because she has sort of outlined her actual evolution to the right more than Cenk. She's released Substack articles talking about how she's changed. Like, you're right, I've changed. She's talked about how various incidents and her dealings with the left online have turned her off against the online left. Do you think she's just dragging Cenk there alongside her? Because it's not like, from a business perspective, this really makes much sense. Cenk's not gaining subscribers. It doesn't seem like TYT has more viewers than at any point before this.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's born out of like shrewd business strategy based on like what things are happening to their company. So it seems earnest. It seems like they earnestly read the comments like way too much, and like no YouTuber should really read the comments because like
I read all the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you'll have your own breakdown. I'm not sure which way you'll go, but we got to keep an eye on that. But yeah,
Cenk was calling Trump Hitler on the campaign trail when he was running for president. In fact, in an interview with Kyle Kulinski, who's up on screen right now, he said it to Crystal and Kyle's face. He said, "I'm not joking around. Donald Trump is Hitler." So, I mean, I think in Anna's, you could make an argument that it's an actual ideological evolution or de-evolution because of a variety of issues. But with Cenk, it's like that's why I kind of am suggesting that maybe she's had more influence than you're admitting, because Cenk was saying that Donald Trump is Hitler not that long ago, and it seems like he was prepared to go into this era as that sort of tank-like force. Now this all kind of seems like he's trying to figure out what to do based on context we're not necessarily aware of that might make this all make more sense. Like he's trying to prevent Anna Kasparian from leaving.
So you're alluding to it's more of a business decision because he's just doing it so much that it's got to be something that he wakes up and like believes in to a certain extent, right?
What if here's another, and again, we don't know. As Gavin said, it's all gonna probably come together when we find out this last missing piece, which is why the fuck he decided to make this brazen pivot. I think it's possible it's Anna Kasparian and he's trying to keep the network together without losing her. I also think a huge part of it at this point, guys, after having watched how unhappy Anna Kasparian is on the mic, after watching how just sick the job makes her, how much she's broken down on air and humiliated herself on multiple occasions, I think she has to have a decent amount of equity in the Young Turks. And I would imagine that right now they're in such disarray. I think they're just absolutely strapped. So they're taking the poly market money. They're taking the money from all over, wherever they can get it. I saw a Cenk making content for another network, which is never a good sign.
Wait, what network was that?
It was called like Middle Eastern Eye. And Cenk's making content for them and uploading it to their
Middle East Eye is like is like Israel Palestine coverage. They do good coverage.
For sure. I just mean it's going to places that are not Young Turks. So he is clearly not interested in monetizing or being exclusive with the views that he's generating, which would explain why he's going to Piers Morgan's show all the time, which is why he's mostly just concerned with getting his own face out there and not as concerned with what's happening in the view count of the Young Turks. So I think he has been getting money from some other source. And
this comment, I'm sorry. Just like someone woke up and typed that.
But you know what I mean? I think that there's a serious likelihood that there is some other funding mechanism that is sustaining Cenk's lifestyle that is not coming from the viewer funding of the Young Turks. Because there's no way to sustain it if you're not. They're losing memberships, which he bitches about on air. They're not getting enough views to sustain the 75 employees that he claims to have.
You think he's getting paid like from the Blaze to do these appearances? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that whatever agreement he has with the poly markets of the world, it might not be tethered to him getting a certain amount of views on the Young Turks network. It might be he can maintain these relationships and these sponsorships as long as he publicly appears and says things on enough platforms. You know what I mean? Like, we're thinking in it as like, oh, it has to be all around at the Young Turks. Yeah, because that's how YouTube will pay him, but it could be another arrangement that he has.
Well, it seems like they pay him to say this is the Poly Market studio and hit this link to join Poly Market. Like I think it's
they paid for the tramp stamp too, yeah.
And they were offering to Hassan too, so it's not like they're it seemed like they really were more interested in the name recognition that would come out of such a deal than like necessarily like poisoning Cenk's ideology itself. But it is weird, and I agree that the Young Turks is definitely not a profitable company at this point. They genuinely have like 70 plus employees, as Cenk discusses. None of their YouTube channels are doing all of that well. So
And
yeah, it's
here's,
a pretty
I mean,
dire
here's what I
situation.
see it like long term is like he keeps saying like, don't worry, the right wing populists are gonna push back or whatever. Like that's what he keeps saying. It's just like, trust me, bro, they're like coming, and you're not seeing what I'm seeing or whatever like that. And I don't see that really coming. I see like most of the stuff people reacting to is like being like in terms of the MAGA people are like fairly positive. The H1B I think was the most like friction, and then they just gave up on that because the news
We
cycle
talked
just
about
like
it, yeah.
keeps moving on. So I'm like, where is that coming from? And I think the reason I think it's more of a kind of an earnest evolution is because he spent the first Trump term on TYT doing like far more lib coverage. It wasn't about horseshoe politics or populism.
Russiagate.
It was about Russiagate and Muellergate and P tapes. And listen, we all love the P tapes. But I think he like
Thiel's dossier, put some respect on
he
it.
like wasn't aware of like any of like the Steve Bannon populism stuff, I guess, and so it's like newer to him or whatever, and so it seems like he's just like learning about all this. I'm
That's
hearing about this for the
bullshit, though.
first
It's not
time.
new to him. He covered the news every single fucking day in the 2015
Yeah, but his focus. Yeah, but
And he
But, like-
he roasted people like Jimmy Dore, who basically were espousing the strategy that he now
Yeah.
espouses. So he wasn't
So-
unaware of it. He was mocking
that's
it.
fair. That's fair. I see a lot of liberal outlets, not just the Young Turks, but I see like New York Times and Ezra Klein or Pod Save America going, we got to understand this populism thing. And that was like not a major discussion in like the first Trump term. Like everyone kind of just treated it like a fluke. And now people are like, oh, there's a significant amount of the country that feels this way. And
Well,
so I
that's
think
because
that's what
Ezra
like is pushing him.
the Ezra Kleins of the world after Trump's first election, he was pushing that book called Why We're Polarized. And he was all on about how we couldn't have Bernie Sanders. And so the Bernie, which is crazy because context about Ezra Klein, guys, when he was blogging back in the day with Matt Iglesias of all people, he was talking about how really it should be a sin for Obama and Americans to have the Affordable Care Act, because what we really should have is the Scandinavian model of healthcare. And then when Bernie Sanders came on the scene, all he did was talk shit on it. So he's aware of the populist streak. I just feel like he decided that wasn't his lane the first time around, and he should talk about how Americans are just polarized and the white people are racist. And now he's trying to rebrand because he knows that has run its course. But I don't think any of these guys are dumb. I think they're just fucking calculating.
Yeah, I think it's all probably more chaotic too than we imagine. Like, I don't think any of this is being really developed in a very sophisticated way. I think that a lot of it is just kind of a collision of like, Cenk's attempt to, have a business plan with Anna Kasparian melting down next to him. It genuinely seems like she's going through a pretty weird part of her professional career. It seems like that's definitely affected their relationship. They both seem significantly less happy. They both seem like they're not really having that much fun when they are live on the Young Turks, which used to be a big part of the appeal of the show too. I've long maintained that if TYT was just the same vibe, the same quality show as it was in 2017, they could basically be saying whatever. They could be espousing just about any political message. But if they were just as fun and funny and the vibe was just as good and the production value was just as high as it was in 2017, they would have a new audience. People would enjoy it. There would be backlash, of course, but more right-wingers, more people that aren't progressives would feel like they had permission to join that channel, to watch that show, if it was just a better show to watch. A big part of their decline also just is the quality of the show as far as its tone, its vibe, its production value, everything that makes a show worth watching, frankly.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there.